We are interested in looking at the occurrence of plastic particles within bottled water. We have obtained bottled water from throughout the world, had it shipped here to our lab. From each case that we have received, we arbitrarily choose 10 bottles. We open each one and inject it with a Nile red dye. Nile red will adsorb onto plastic, but not onto naturally occurring materials. We let it incubate for 30 minutes, and then we filter each of the bottles through a glass fiber filter. All of this is done under our laminar flow hood to diminish the possible contamination from the laboratory environment. But another thing that we do is we examine all filters prior to use under the microscope to avoid contamination that could have been on the filter to begin with. Then we use a crime light, which is a light that has specific wavelengths of light that it emits. It's in the blue-green region of the spectrum, which causes the plastic to fluoresce. And we look at it through an orange filter so that we can see those particles of plastic fluorescing under our microscope. Any piece that we can see and physically manipulate, which would be particles about 100 microns or larger, we then analyze by FTIR, which is Fourier transfer infrared spectrometry. This gives us a fingerprint of that particle in order to identify the polymeric content. Smaller particles that are fluorescing are left on the filter, and those are later counted with what is called a plastic galaxy app. Each quadrant is read into the app. It's turned from a colored picture into a black and white, where the fluorescing plastic particles are white relative to the dark black background, and each one of those is then counted with the app. Every brand of bottled water that we looked at had plastic, every single brand. The occurrence varies kind of dramatically. Certain brands had much higher counts than other brands, or higher densities rather, but they all had plastic within them. I expected that we would find plastics in bottled water, as we did with tap water, especially because we know that most bottled water is really just bottled tap water. What did surprise me, though, is the quantities and the types. We're seeing fragments, pellets, films, foams, in addition to those fibers, and many of these particles are coated in lubricants. So it's definitely, you're seeing that the manufacturing of the bottled water is affecting the quality of the water that you're drinking. The particles that we were able to analyze to 100% verify that they are in fact plastics and identify the type of plastics are probably on the order of 100 microns and larger. But we can see particles that are smaller than that because of the Nile red dye that we used that fluoresces. And so on our filters then we can fluoresce those particles and take photographs and analyze the number of particles that we can see fluorescing like stars.
I really need this too.
What concerns me most is most people who drink bottled water are drinking bottled water because they think it's cleaner than tap water. And our results and those of others, we're the first people to look for plastic in bottled water, but we're certainly not the first people to look for synthetic chemicals in bottled water, right? And so you have multiple studies that have shown that in fact bottled water is not cleaner than tap water. And so you have this whole kind of segment of society that's drinking this and giving this to their children to drink, and that concerns me. These particles of plastic are so incredibly small that it's very possible that not only are we ingesting them, but they're making their way across the gastrointestinal tract and therefore being spread throughout our bodies, having direct impacts from the plastic itself, but also the chemicals that are within and adsorbed onto the surface of these plastics. When you drink bottled water, you are ingesting plastic. Our study verifies that. Are you excreting that plastic? Probably, possibly. Your body is a very warm environment, and that allows the leaching of these chemicals. And what are the effects that those are having? Those are questions that are still, we're still investigating. I think probably the best way to put it in perspective is that the UN has ranked synthetic chemicals, including plastic pollution, as second only to climate change when it comes to environmental threats to the survival of our species. Water is very basic to life. We drink it, we have to for life, right? You can't survive. But it's not just water. You think of anything that you make with water. Most of us drink coffee in the morning, juice, wine, beer, food. Not only like cooking food in the water, but also the fact that we use water to water our plants and our animals. This is so pervasive. you're drinking the minimum amount that you're required to drink per day, we're already talking about tens of thousands of particles that each one of us is drinking in a year. There's no doubt at this point that we're ingesting it and that we're ingesting significant quantities of it. To me, plastic is an amazing material. It really is. I mean, it has properties that make it completely unique from any other natural material, you know, glass, metal, wood. There are very logical uses of plastic, but I think that there are very illogical uses of plastic. Because of convenience, we've gone into it and made it such a prominent part of our society that it's so prolific that we can't imagine a world without plastic.